welcome to this important panel, flagship event in AIB's program. Welcome to the AIB Pavilion. This event, the future of financing partnerships for energy transition. Is this working? Or maybe I'm just too tall for this microphone, I don't know. I think, okay, I'll crouch down a little bit so I can be better heard. The future of financing partnerships for energy transition. So in a little while, we'll move to a panel discussion, which I will moderate. But first, it's a great honor to have, we have a bit of competition behind us. It's my great honor to invite our opening remarks. We are delighted to be joined today by both President Jin Liqun, the President of AIIB, and by Mary Schapiro, the Vice Chair for Global Public Policy at Bloomberg, who's also the Vice Chair of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. And in both capacities, she has done so much to advance this transition agenda. So, President Jin, I will invite you to speak first, and then after you finish, Mary, I will invite up. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you very much. Colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's truly our great honor and privilege to have you all here to have exchange your mind. I think in our bank, we have more to learn from you than you can possibly to reap certain kind of benefit. I'm saying this with humility because we have been benefited from so much support, insights from all of our partners. So we are gathered here today with an ambitious goal. That is to significantly reshape the global landscape through our ambitious green finance efforts. Aligning with our bank's motto for this year's summit, our actions must be bolder, better, and faster. We are here to mobilize capital, finance innovative green technologies in other developing economies as a more realistic and sustainable scenario path to net zero. The only way we can achieve this is by working together, by acting together. Nobody can achieve this single-handedly. Let's frame the issue at hand. The global climate crisis poses formidable challenge, rendering it more critical than ever before to embark on the acceleration of investments in green transition that is the critical, mission critical. The International Energy Agency is clear to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. We need to triple our current annual global investments to $4 trillion by 2030. Asia stands at the forefront of this battle against climate change, and it's the clear and the present danger we have to be in mind. First, Asia accounts to over 50% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions and accounts for over 80% of the global population affected by natural disasters, which means, as it now stands, Asia is contributing to gas emissions. We need to reduce it. And Asia is also victimized by the disasters caused by the climate change. And I often said, in today's world, probably we should not say this is natural disaster, pure and simple. It's not. There are so many natural disasters which are induced by the human behavior. It's anthropogenic. Second, Asia needs to double its annual investment to 1.23 trillion in climate initiative by 2030 to align with Sustainable Development climate goals. And third, the region holds vast renewable energy potential. It will be home to almost half of the world's annually installed solar and wind capacity by 2030. And I think renewable investment is on its way to go up. However, it's clear that there's still a huge deficit in climate investment in Asia, particularly in frontier markets. Public resources, though vital, are far from being adequate. Private capital would be critical to filling this gap. And it's true that private sector companies are fully aware of their social responsibility. And to my knowledge, quite a lot of responsible private sector companies would forego certain amount of profit in favor of investing for climate. It's no longer a profit maximization. It's no longer that kind of thing. So I think we should encourage the private sector's focus on their efforts to improve the climate. They should be encouraged. And we are working toward this objective. 4 factors, in my view, are critical. First, there are high perceived risks which are too often not paired with reality. Second, the cost of capital is high, up to 2 to 3 times higher in emerging economies than in advanced economies. Third, there is a lack of risk capital. Fourth, there is a lack of bankable projects rooted in the need for more enabling environments, technical assistance, and project preparation. Recognizing this, AIIB is committed to driving smart solutions that bring public, philanthropic, private, and institutional investors together. Globally, there are approximately 210 trillion of assets under management by institutional investors. In Asia, sovereign wealth funds from the region stand at unparalleled scale, with 4.9 trillion US dollars equivalent under management, more than in any other region. The future of the financing partnerships will rely on 3 things. First, bring new and old concessional partners together. Old friends, new friends, you're all welcome. The donor community is evolving. Beneficiaries become donors. Those who get support become the contributors. This is a very encouraging shift, and we hope more countries would join the donor rank and moving from the recipients or beneficiaries rank. This includes differences in return risk mindset. As I said, risk return, we have to interpret it in a new way. Operational approaches and financial instrument deployment. Third, fostering new partnerships and financing models to maximize impact. Combined AIIB blunted concessional finance transactions amounted to only $13.4 billion US dollars in 2021. $13.4 billion. I think it's just very much limited. Mostly deployed on a deal-by-deal basis. We also fall short on private capital mobilization. Each MDB dollar plus concessional commitments has mobilized only 64% in private finance. So we should understand this. Now, we need to do better we need to do more. AIIB has partnered with Bloomberg Philanthropies to develop an innovative blended financing initiative, the Asia Green Partnership Fund. The fund is designed to leverage MDB and philanthropic resources to crowd in private and institutional capital in Asia to support the green transition. I invite you all to join us to shape this innovative undertaking. Our bank is also joining the Capacity Building Coalition, spearheaded by GFANZ, a truly multi-stakeholder effort bringing together technical and financial resources across philanthropies and private and public financiers. This is the type of innovative partnership that we need more of. Having said that, I will re-highlight the point. The challenges ahead of us are indeed formidable, daunting. Nevertheless, through strategic partnerships, innovative breakthroughs, and collaborative efforts, I believe, and we believe, there's much we can collectively accomplish. We must be confident. Our gathering here is not just a meeting of minds, but a unification of purpose and actions. And the meeting of minds will lead to joint actions. We look forward to working alongside our partners for a greener, more prosperous, and inclusive tomorrow. This is not talk shop. This is a workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, President Jin. And I'd now like to invite Mary Shapiro to give her opening remarks. Mary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, President Jin, for hosting this conversation. As always, we are grateful for the collaboration between our organizations on critical climate topics. Most recently, this includes AIIB's participation in the Capacity Building Coalition that you just mentioned, that we launched on Friday to support financial institutions in emerging markets and developing countries as they seek to develop and implement transition plans and sustainable finance strategies. Of course, that's just one example of the kinds of partnerships we all need to foster to scale the financing needed to reach net zero. As President Jin noted, we need transformative partnerships that help address barriers to mobilizing investment at scale. It is abundantly clear that the challenges of financing the net zero transition globally cannot be met without partnering to deliver both tools and action. Starting first with partnering to deliver the tools, the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, or GFANZ, was established to convene the net zero alliances across the financial sector, helping to address common challenges. This work began with developing the tools, frameworks, and approaches needed to implement net zero commitments. Last year, GFANZ published a common framework for net zero transition planning, which we are now seeing firms implement at scale, building on effective technical collaboration with partner organizations. As part of this framework, we helped develop a common definition of transition finance that includes going where the emissions are and backing companies with credible transition plans to get emissions down, and if that's not possible, to fund the managed phase-out of stranded assets. On the issue of managed phase-out, which is especially relevant in the context of the Asia-Pacific region, where coal accounts for 60% of power generation, the GFANZ APAC network brought together a public-private group to develop guidance on financing the managed phase-out of coal-fired power plants in Asia-Pacific. This approach supports the flow of finance to those with plans to accelerate the phase-out of coal power generation and hastens the scale-up of renewables. We welcome increasing engagement on this important topic from governments and multilateral development banks, because their support is needed to make these transactions happen at the pace that the planet demands. But as President Jin spoke about, we also need partnership on action to scale investment where it is needed most. First, there's the challenge of a huge shortfall in cross-border climate finance available to emerging markets and developing economies. External finance of clean energy and EMDEs needs to grow fivefold by the end of this decade. The vast majority of climate mitigation investment will need to come from the private sector to allow public finance to address the very hardest problems. And the needs for adaptation and resilience will be at least as great. To address this challenge, we need more effective collaboration between public, private, and philanthropic finance, with MDBs playing an absolutely critical role. Through the Bloomberg Philanthropies partnership with the AIIB, we are working to develop novel approaches to this collaboration, including attempting to scale support for project preparation for renewable energy projects in collaboration with the private sector. It also includes developing innovative financing mechanisms that ensure that public money can be used most effectively, including to address risks where there are otherwise commercially viable projects. In the same vein, GFANZ convenes private finance working groups to support the just energy transition partnerships in Indonesia and Vietnam, and more recently in Senegal. Through these JETPs, we work closely with governments, MDBs, and international partners to problem solve for thorny issues in these countries' transitions, all in support of enabling greater ambition. The second major challenge is how we address the highest emitting industries, which are stuck in transition traps. These industries that include materials, chemical impact decarbonization solutions for heavy emitting sectors across industry, energy, and transport. All of these areas, partnerships and collaborations are key to ensuring that ambition is met with real action. Thank you again, President Jin, and I will hand it over now to Danny to lead what I'm sure will be a fascinating conversation. Thank you.
Weird thing to do, but anyway, there we are. Okay. Can you hear me through this contraption? Okay, not yet. There we are. Okay, wonderful. Very good. So, having heard President Jin and Mary's opening remarks, I'd now like to invite our really distinguished panelists to come and take a seat on the stage. Let me introduce them in the order that I have them. So, Dr. Qi Bin is the Executive Vice President and Deputy Chief Investment Officer of the China Investment Corporation, CIC, China's Sovereign Wealth Fund. And next, I'd like to invite Derek Rosicky, Executive Director and Head of Responsible Investing for Mubadala Investment Company. So please take a seat. Mohammed Jamil Al-Ramahi, CEO of Masdar. I'm sorry, the information. Martin, from Masdar, please. And then last but by no means least, Dr. Andrew Steer, who is President and CEO of the Bezos Earth Fund. Now, you may ask, how have we selected this extraordinary panel? And the answer is because we are all in different ways partners in the energy transition. AIB is working with GAPP, which is Bezos Earth Fund is one of the major contributors to that, which is a new facility for energy transition. We're delighted to be working with Masdar on several projects, and we hope many more in future. And with Mubadala and CIC, we really have welcomed the very good discussions we've been having over the last few months to work together in the kind of innovative structures and transactions that President Jin was describing in his remarks. So I'd like to do this panel. I think we have about 30 minutes, but in two stages. The first is to look at what are the issues and problems and to kind of take stock. And then we'll have a second round more on solutions and what we can do together. But in the context of this COP, we know that we have the imperative to work together to dramatically scale up and speed up the financing available for the transition. As President Jin said, the battle against climate change is going to be won or lost in Asia, and so spreading that finance to emerging markets is particularly important. So maybe I would start with you, Chi-Bin, and then Derek, because this is a great opportunity to hear directly from institutional investors. So could you answer this question? What do you need to invest more in frontier markets? And what do you need from us as MDBs or philanthropic, like the Bezos Earth Fund, to help you make that transition happen? So, Chi-Bin.
Thank you, Danny. And thank President Jin for your excellent speech. President Jin actually used to be the chair of our supervision board of CIC, so it's great to see you again. Your question relates to what the kind of role CIC and public should play and how we could collaborate going forward. Let me just briefly share some of the things we have done in CIC. As one of the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, CIC I think plays attaches very strong significance to energy transition investment. It's my view that sovereign wealth fund should fulfill some social responsibilities, such as facilitating cross-border industrial cooperation and promoting energy transition and making this world a better place through our investment. So in CIC, we have done a couple of things. We have established an ESG policy weaved into our investment process. As I mentioned, one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world, we operate in both public and the private markets. In the public market, we invest in both ESG indices and run our own ESG investment portfolio. In the private sector, in the private market, we have implemented an ESG evaluation framework for private equity manager selection. And in particular, at CIC Capital, which is the direct investment arm of CIC under my supervision, we have done three things. First of all, we invested in climate transition themed fund managers across infrastructure, traditional PE, and growth asset classes. Secondly, we established a dedicated strategy on real asset investment in energy transition. And furthermore, we strive to facilitate cross-border collaboration. In recent years, we have assembled a dedicated China value creation team that helps foreign companies explore the Chinese markets. And in the case of renewable energy, helps our foreign partners tap into the Chinese supply chain. During the COVID period, when there was a disruption to the solar panel supply, CIC helped many of our infrastructure GPs access China's solar panel manufacturers and at a much cheaper price. Actually, in the past 3 years, we have helped over 10 renewable developers access, and around the world, procure nearly $4 billion worth of equipment from China. So that's the kind of unique, contribution we can make to make this world a greener place.
Thank you very much indeed. And if you pass the microphone to Derek, kind of same question to you. We know that sovereign wealth funds have fiduciary responsibilities. What do you need from us, from MDBs, from philanthropies and so on, or from the wider community, from governments and so on, to help you do more in those? I know you already work in these spaces, but to do more in especially emerging markets and even frontier markets.
Thank you very much for the question. Pleasure to be on this panel and speaking after such distinguished guests, as well as on the panel. This is such an important issue for us. I think we need to take a very pragmatic approach. If I may, I'll try and address two key issues that we're seeing at a macro level, and then pass to our colleagues, my colleague from Masdar, Martin, who can describe a little bit the micro level of implementation and how they, as a capital deployer that we own a significant interest in, are continuing to actually drive deployment of renewable energy capital into emerging markets. I think there's 2 points that I'd like to highlight. One thing that we've seen that is inhibiting capital flows from the established markets, the more liquid markets, into emerging markets is a lack of a common definition of what a good deal looks like, what kind of specific characteristics do deals need to have to attract capital into these markets. And there's been some very, very interesting work done, and Martin can and talk about that, about how we're working to find a common definition about that. And a point that I would use to illustrate this example is I was at a high-level UN Council meeting on transition finance recently, and literally back-to-back, in the first challenge statement that was made was by a project developer in Africa saying, we just have so many projects here within our own company and within Africa, and there's just no capital for them. Literally, the next statement was somebody from the financing community saying, we have so much money, it's a veritable wave of capital, we just have no projects. And I was looking around to see if anybody else was seeing the discontinuity in that statement. And so we need to invest as an ecosystem to help establish a common definition of what is required to allow capital to flow. And so that brings me on to the second point, which I think is very important. And I think there's a lot of work being done increasingly these days, and that is to work for systems-based solutions for what is fundamentally a systemic problem. We have had an enormous amount of effort over the last years of very siloed solutions that are fantastic and technically accurate and perfect in their own regard. But when they come to interconnect with the rest of the capital system and what makes, you have to have the whole wheel connected to get capital to flow, these siloed solutions are like putting a square peg into a round hole, and they don't fit at the interface between the different parts of the capital system. And so I guess what I would ask for, and we had a wonderful meeting with the introductory meeting with the GEOP team at Climate Week in New York, and as we start to integrate more broadly the different parts of the system, is perhaps to take a moment to step back from the traditional roles that all of us have played, whether it's the MDBs and DFIs and philanthropy, sovereign wealth, step back and reassess how we can work together as the economies and the markets have evolved to address our unique needs for returns, be they financial or otherwise non-financial in nature, to fit the system, to sort of re-engineer the system in an effective way. And so I think there's a lot of areas. We were talking earlier about the opportunity to focus on the FX issues. Maybe I think if we can address some of the core sticking points for the international capital system, like FX and finding this common definition of what a good deal is, the capital will flow, and we'll get a lot more than a fraction in terms of activating the dollar from the MDBs or philanthropies. We can get that to multiples by addressing the particular pain points in unique ways. And we really need to focus on that. I think the iron is hot, and we're ready to recraft how we're doing things, but we have to take a minute to realize that the way we've been doing it in the past isn't working anymore.
I think that's a great point, and one we'll come back to also in the second part of the discussion. But let me turn, if I may, if you could pass them. I'm sorry, we have one microphone with a long wire, so we'll make sure you don't trip over it on the way back. But Martin, firstly, we really appreciate the partnership that we're building with Masdar in specific projects. But also, you've been taking more risky positions in emerging markets. You've been pushing the envelope in terms of the projects that can be done, which is hugely impressive. We've been working together on some of those. You're part of the Energy Transition Accelerator Facility, ETAF, also. I mean, what are your takeaways from that experience so far? What works, what doesn't work? What do we need to change or do better in order to get the scale that we need?
Well, thank you for that question. I mean, first I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Martin Nagel. Unfortunately, our CEO could not make it. But I've been in Masdar since 2009, and I've been working with commercialization and and scalable business models. And most recently, I have been deploying some of the learnings of Masdar into how we can systemize our experience in emerging markets. And the starting point for emerging markets is actually, from our perspective, quite attractive. With the reduction in renewable energy cost, which has been driven by the massive scale-up in supply chain from China, we see that renewable energy actually has quite an attractive risk profile in emerging markets. And there's a mismatch in risk perception. The traditional approach is to, if you look at the market that you're investing in, is to open up something called a capital asset pricing model. And then you have to look at what's the country risk rating, what's the risk premium of bonds with a similar rating, and then you have to add that to the market risk premium, and then you derive an extremely high cost of capital for a project in an emerging market. And this is all wrong. And the reason it is wrong is because if you have the lowest cost of energy in a given market, you actually don't have the same counterparty risk as the government default risk. You are producing a product that the consumer is already, or the business are already using, and you're doing it much cheaper than incumbent production. So why should you be penalized by a sovereign risk rating of the country you're in? And one interesting example in this regard is Argentina, where they came up with a structure which unlocked $8 billion in capital, while Argentina was a triple C rated country. And this is something called the iTrust model, where they put together a guarantee fund, or a guarantee of $750 million, which were underwriting two of the major risks that multinational development banks and developers are worried about, and that is the sovereign default risk. So there was a project termination guarantee in that 750 million, and there was a liquidity guarantee in that 750 million. And so if the project, or if the off-taker couldn't pay the electricity in a given quarter, you could call upon that guarantee and get paid. And that dramatically improved investors' risk perception of Argentina. And it not only improved the risk perception of Argentina, but the amount of project it generated dramatically lowered the cost of electricity in the country. So you actually went from around $200 per megawatt hour electricity to 50, with 147 projects being put on the market. So this was something that helped change investors' risk perception. The market was already de-risked because renewable electricity has really, really low cost. But by putting this guarantee on top, the low risk became visible to everyone, and that attracted massive amounts of investments. So we are very excited about what we see systemized in Argentina. It very much mirrors the experience Masdar has when we go in and we start working on a bilateral basis with governments around an MOU to develop a large project, where we are also helping the government doing structural changes to electricity markets. And we very often see that the first bilateral discussions are resulting in a PPP program, where prices are coming down dramatically for electricity. And this is also something we saw in Argentina. The first project had a cost of equity of around 15%, and the last projects that are coming in the market are down to 8%. And this is again contributing to improving the risk perception, lowering the cost of equity, and lowering electricity costs for markets which dearly need it.
Thank you very much. And I think this point about risk perceptions is a really important one that we should come back to. Now, Andrew, I mean, you have a huge experience in development, and with the Bezos Earth Fund, you have this extraordinary commitment from Jeff Bezos to use his resources to support this this transition, and also you're one of the founders of the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, which AIB is very proud to partner with. What lessons do you draw from these experiences so far? What works and what does not? And we're going to come back later for big ideas, but if you could share your sense of what's going well and not going well, that would be great.
Good. Well, first, thank you. Thank you very much. AIIB is doing remarkable work. President Jin, you gave a wonderful statement. You laid out the 4 main problems, so I won't repeat those. We need to go after them one by one. I'm also struck, by the way, with the competing language from next door. It's actually, if you like, symbolic of what the real problem is. You know, we're all talking in a way that is sort of orthogonal. It's a little hard to hear each other. But here's the point. We'll come to the sort of the solutions in our next round. But the problem is partly all the technical things we've talked about, but it's also actually an attitudinal and it's a kind of how we operate issue as well, I believe. If you think about all of the issues that President Jin laid out so well and have been laid out clearly, and additional issues here, there are in the world there is the capacity to address each one of them. There are risk appetites that are different in different parts of the capital stack. We actually can, our brain power is big enough to figure out how to actually put the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together. But the fact of the matter is the jigsaw puzzle is not being put together because we don't operate at a senior enough level together. So take, for example, the JETPs, which are brilliant diplomacy. You know, take our hats off to the foreign ministries, the treasuries of the G7 countries. Commend also the private sector players that are sort of sitting a bit on the sidelines that are interested in getting engaged. Also the DFCs who actually would quite like to get engaged but don't really know how to. Philanthropy would love to be part of the picture, and so on. I mean, there are carbon markets, by the way, I'll come on to that later, but can provide billions for the energy transition. But what's not happening is at a senior level, getting together and saying, look, let's put our best brains at a senior managing director level to actually talk through what it would take. And then at the vice president or presidential level of the different institutions, sit around with the host government, obviously, and talk through way above the project level, the program level, which then would have a whole bunch of nested projects, where you actually would have people sitting around a table with decision-making power to take different parts of the risk, if you like. That's not been happening. So you go to a country like Vietnam, which has made a huge commitment to stop building coal-powered plants. They have been delivering energy power to their citizens brilliantly over the last 20, 30 years. When I lived there for 5 years, 38% of rural dwellers had access to electricity. Now it's 99% have access. These guys are good at providing power, and it's still growing. The demand's growing by about 6% a year. They're very, very good at building coal-powered plants, but actually moving to offshore wind and so on. And remember, the sun shines in the south, but not in the north. Coal's in the north. Whole bunch of interesting sort of geo issues there as well. What we're not doing is sitting down together. So, for example, the G7 governments did some relatively back-of-the-envelope calculations. Philanthropy would have been delighted to have been included in that. So too, DFCs are trying to figure out what to do. But they're sort of brought in later on, and then philanthropy in particular is often treated like a sort of rich old uncle that as long as you're really nice to him, you know, he'll give you some money. But actually, if you work for Jeff Bezos, the reason that he is a billionaire is because actually he's very good at analysis, and he actually wants to hire people who want to be part of the solution. And if you start treating each other like that, I mean, just look at these people here. If we together sat with, whether this is the Vietnamese government or whoever it is, So what we need is something, we've sort of suggested the phrase, a deal team for the planet. Sort of, if you like, an investment banking function, which really doesn't exist. I mean, why is it, as President Jin says, that each dollar of MDB balance sheet money only yields, what, 65%, 65 cents? It's not necessary that it's that low. It's because we don't do things together. We do them sequentially. And so I think there are some really good ideas which we'll come to in the next part of the discussion.
So, Andrew, maybe this can be the first meeting of the deal team for the planet. I think we have. It's a great concept, and I mean, I have to say also that the thinking that you're talking about is happening much more among the MDBs. We've also been challenged, I think, rightly to say MDBs need to work more closely together as a system. That was one of the key things that President Jin has been pushing for, and that was agreed in terms of the heads engaging with each other at their meeting yesterday. We also set out plans for country platforms, taking some of the lessons from the JETPs, with MDBs coming together with governments and other partners at the country level. So I think those lessons that you highlight are right. Actually, I was going to suggest, if I may, just stick with you, Andrew, to go in the reverse order for the second round. I mean, look, you mentioned big ideas. There are also some incremental ideas. President Jin mentioned some of the partnerships that AIIB's involved on. What do you think are the most important ideas that we should be pursuing through this nascent deal team for the planet that's sitting here with you?
Well, look, I mean, the story at the moment is each institution is performing well within their own terms of reference. And what we're not getting is the whole adding up to more than the sum of the parts. I mean, that's really the problem. It's not that there's a shortage of money out there. It's not that it's impossible to think about how to shift commercial money. It's just that we are not behaving in the right way. The reason we set up the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet is it's a global energy alliance for people and planet. So yes, it's a fund that has $1.5 billion roughly of grant funds in it. That is, if you like, lubrication for an alliance where we do things differently. I mean, it was very interesting when we started the idea. We invited vice presidents from all the multilateral development, the regional multilateral banks and the World Bank to Bellagio, together with the heads of DFCs around the world and a few private sector bankers. And the attitude was very much, well, look, that's fantastic. You've got a $1.5 billion. I mean, give it to us because we know how to spend it well. And we said, yes, we do want to give it to you, but there has to be a different way of working because you're working well at the moment, but we need multiples. It's a 7-fold increase of energy investment of emerging and developing countries, netting out China, except for China. It's huge. It's a 1.9 trillion, and that requires, per year, it requires a different mindset. And so what we're trying to do is the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet is inject funds in a way that removes barriers. We can do anything. We can take first loss, we can subsidize directly, we can do project preparation, legal reform. So we've got all of these instruments can move very, very quickly, and that's the idea. But the challenge is to get the alliance members really to be willing to do things differently, and I think they are now. A couple of other thoughts. President Jin mentioned the fact that there's a lack of well-prepared projects, and I loved what you said, Kim. It's perfect. We launched 2 days ago something called the Allied Climate Partners, which I think you're part of as well. It's a very, very good idea, Mark Galogli and co. The issue is the most risky part of any project is, if you like, the first 2 or 3 years where the project is being prepared, where the land's being procured, regulations are being discussed, offtake agreements are done. That's the risky part. It only costs 5% of the cost of a project. Private investors are not going to put money into that part. Why? Because 40% of all that project preparation never reaches financial closure. So what you've had up until now is grant facilities going into that. which is good but not sustainable. So the idea is that we just put 25 million in. There'll be a total of about 300 million grant resources that they will be turned into junior equity, first loss, but then pari passu return. That will then draw in the DFCs who would be willing to come in for that 2-year to 3-year period. Then what you do is you then sell off the prepared project, and even if you've lost 40% of the money we put in, there's enough return that the modeling suggests that actually we get the money back. We don't want the money back because it's a grant. It would then get recycled. So that's an example of, if you like, a sort of innovation, so to speak. But just finally on carbon markets, yesterday we, together with, again, it's a role for philanthropy, but obviously it's overwhelmingly bigger for the private sector, Rockefeller Foundation, the Bezos Earth Fund, and John Kerry and the State Department launched the Energy Transition Accelerator. And it turns out that there are, I mean, on the stage yesterday we had, there are about 12 major companies that are willing to put serious money into energy transition. And there are countries that would be delighted because essentially it's like grants, a carbon market. They'd be delighted to do it. And then the trick is to get the standard setters like SBTI and VCMI to agree that it's okay to offset, let's say, 50% of your Scope 3 emissions, because the corporations are not willing to put billions in unless they get some credit for it. So I think we've reached a breakthrough now, and it's very, very exciting in that regard. And what it could do, actually, the modeling that's been done suggests that actually you could get between 25 and 35% of the entire cost of the energy transition financed by energy markets, by carbon markets. So that's another innovation. And we have to sort of embrace all of these parts of the jigsaw puzzle together.
Thank you very much. And a lot of ideas for us to follow up on. Martin, in the same spirit, what's the next step for Masdar? What are you doing or planning to do differently to meet this challenge to scale up even faster?
Yeah, I don't think we are planning to do things differently. I think we're planning to do more of the same things we're already doing.
Great.
and systemize them in a way where they are scalable, also involving multinational development banks and trying to develop regions. That's the last thing which we are now looking at. We think that if you have a progressive, the challenge is for development is often, for utility scale, is often policy. So, and policy is very difficult to implement country by country. And the solution to getting to opportunities at scale, we think, is by aggregating country into regions, starting maybe with one country, developing something which is working there, ensuring there is interconnectivity with other countries, and targeting the countries where the arbitrage opportunity between the cost of generation and what consumers are paying is the largest, because that's where the capital will have the largest impact. And if one can supplement a deregulation and a restructuring of the electricity sector, one of the most important things is cost recovery. If you look at electricity in a lot of emerging markets today, in about half of emerging markets, electricity is subsidized. And that is a key obstacle for bankability, because you want to make sure that electricity is actually, that you get paid when you are developing your projects. So the first step is to deregulate those markets, remove energy subsidies, ensure that you have also a decoupling of the local utility into distribution, generation, and transmission. And if there is cost recovery in each one of these three buckets, you already have a market which is ripe for scaling up of renewables, subject to, of course, also mitigating grid constraints, which is one of the largest obstacles to capital deployment today. So we are very excited about working more closely with countries and regions on that level to create those structures. And if we can have a guarantee, like I mentioned previously, on top of that, like the iTrust model, which is now being put together, building on the Argentinian experience, then I think you have a package which is visible to the world which is already de-risked in the fundamentals of the electricity sector, but that risk structure on top is providing that transparency and that extra comfort for investors. And I think that is really what is needed to create opportunities at scale. And that's what really our focus.
It's interesting the focus that you put on the importance of policy reforms also at the country and regional level. That's something that the AIB board is also discussing in terms of should we put some of our resources into supporting policy reforms to help investors scale up as well as in terms of projects. So thank you for sharing that also. Now, I'll come to you first, Derek, and from what you've heard so far, and looking at this daunting challenge that we have ahead of us, what are your takeaways? What role do you see for Mubadala in accelerating and scaling investments in renewables and in transition? Is there anything that you would like to do differently, or that you would like us to do differently to help you achieve those goals?
Yes, yes to all of that. I think a couple of ideas. One of the things when I was in Climate Week in New York, one of the things I kept hearing loudly and over again is we need to have high integrity solutions. I agree, absolutely. The challenge that we've had, and one of the great challenges we've faced, I think, across sustainability integration and implementation, is that we have equated high integrity with perfection. And that is an impossible situation. And it is stopping us from making progress because one of the most powerful things of humans is our ability to innovate. And if you're always looking for the perfect solution and are unwilling to take any step until you feel like you've got exactly a 10 out of 10, you cannot innovate. And so I think we absolutely must have high integrity solutions, and it does not mean trying to implement a perfect solution. We've done that, I think, very effectively at Mubadala over the last couple of years as we've looked to accelerate integration of climate and other considerations into our portfolio. We had a colleague in the industry looking at our progress. They worked for a DFI, and they said they've been working for a DFI for 10 years, and that DFI had been active in ESG integration for 10 years before that, and Mubadala has accomplished in 1.5 years more than that DFI has been able to do in 20. And the reason why is because we're building tools, we're building implementation, we're implementing, we're being very focused on what the negative externalities, negative consequences, and positive consequences of those tools are. And we're iterating quickly and moving forward in very fast steps to evolve our integration. And so I would ask the system to do that as we look for systems-based solutions working together in concert in a coordinated way that we need to iterate quickly. Try it, figure out what doesn't work, and move on. I love the idea of a deal team for the world. It's something that as we're working very closely with the One Planet Sovereign Wealth Fund group. I know you know Laurence. We're trying to do that in some context in Senegal and in the year ahead. We would welcome some collaboration on that because a holistic approach that also recognizes and that needs to be equity-led, because at the end of the day, equity is always the ultimate structure of deals, in my opinion. And corporates, asset owners need to step up to the plate and work collaboratively with the MDBs, with the commercial bankers, with the philanthropies, not as an afterthought, but as in the first principle, to realize that it's not just about going and identifying the deals that exist in the market today. We have to build the pipeline. To build the pipeline, you have to have a common understanding of what a good deal is. So working with government agencies, working with the local business developers, because we cannot possibly put business developers across Africa. And we need to both build the capacity there and share the gain from creating those deals with the people on the ground who are doing the hard work of creating the deals and working with Three Karens and other organizations to build that capacity up. But taking a holistic systems approach that recognizes that everything from the technical building of the pipeline all the way through to execution is actually mutually beneficial for all in the system. And that to get great things done, you know, this is a journey we're on. We have to work together to recognize all the steps of the journey that we need to execute together. So it's really a systems approach to a systemic problem in collaboration with everybody.
Thank
Moving,
you.
Iterating quickly.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Chibin, you have the last word on this panel. Interested to know what you reflect on what you've heard, and what are the big things that you think CIC can also be involved in to help accelerate the transition around the world?
Thank you very much, Danny. I think the key to the success of green transition is partnership. Each party, should fulfill their shared but divided responsibilities. You know, government should enact policy incentives. Corporate should manage their, carbon footprints. Consumers should make green choices, and financial institutions, of course, try to provide funding to incentivize greener growth. I would like to use one example, one innovation CIC has made in the past couple of years to illustrate my point. In the past 5-6 years, we have come up with a series of bilateral funds with leading financial institutions in the developed world, covering 6 countries out of G7. In probably the most unlikely time when all the decoupling was taking place, but we were able to secure a lot of good partnership and exchange comparative advantages with our partners. Look, we never pretend we understand the United States better than Blackstone or Carlyle or Goldman Sachs, or we understand the UK better than HSBC, but we surely understand China better than them. So that's how we try to bring value to this partnership. So instead of just investing in the fund, passively, we try to, help a portfolio company to access China market. In one case, for one American company, which is a cooling solution provider to leading cell phone maker in the world, and we help them access China market, increase their revenue by 700% within 3 years of our investment, and making Chinese server, Chinese communication equipment maker greener. So it's totally win-win. So in the past couple of years, we have helped almost 24 of multinational companies, in particular small, medium-sized, to access China market, typically improving their performance in China by like 300-400%. And by doing that, it's totally win-win. I think the key is win-win. You have Chinese consumers access better product services. You have American or Western blue-collar workers getting better job opportunity, and you have our investors and our own money earning better return. And so and through this investment in infrastructure space, we invest in 3/4 of the world's best infrastructure GPs. Theoretically speaking, we have access to 3/4 of the infrastructure projects in the private market. On the other hand, we have access to probably 90% of the solar panel in the world, 80% of the wind turbine in the world, probably 60-50% of the EV and the batteries of this world. So by incorporating Chinese renewable energy capacity into our infrastructure investment, we can increase our return probably by 1 or 2 percentage points and make this world greener at a much cheaper price. Now, the 2 more initiatives we're now working on, with great effort, is 2 emerging market, regions. One Asian country, the other is GCC countries. What we have found was that the challenges are not necessarily bigger, but obviously significantly different. I think the good experience we had in the past couple of years with all this developed countries partnership was you need to have a good local partner. It could be a local GP, it could be a global GP with local expertise, but it has to be a very good partner. and we exchange comparative advantages with them. So it could be Mubadala, it could be AIB. So, and everybody here on this panel, we look forward to collaborating with you guys going forward. Thank you.
So thank you very much indeed. As President Jin said, this has been a workshop and not a talk shop. I think that there are a lot of important ideas that have been shared here. I think a lot of opportunities for partnerships that when we're back here, or maybe not here, but back somewhere next year for COP29, we can see that we've brought them to fruition to the next stage. I think the message about the importance of systemic reform and different actors thinking differently about what their roles are in order to make the whole greater than the sum of the parts came across, I think, from all of the panelists. The need to move fast. We're headquartered in Beijing. In China, they often talk about moving at China speed. I'm going to add to that now, moving at Mubadala speed, because there is really a need for this transition to take place quickly and to scale up quickly. And I fully agree with the point. This is going to involve experimentation, innovation, trying things out, and be willing to take risks and accept that some of those things will work brilliantly. Maybe some of them will not work so brilliantly. But if we're not experimenting in that way, then we're not going to be able to get the transition at the scale and speed that is needed. And it has to be a truly global effort. We've heard about the Chinese perspective. We've heard about from the Middle East. We've heard from global organizations here. We all have to work together to achieve this transition. So it only remains for me to ask all of you to thank our panel in the traditional way, and we look forward very much, all of us, to working together to be the deal team for the world. Thank you.